What are we doing here, hun?
This is our first Christmas cookie of 2022. I make Christmas cookies for my office. It's how I get my Christmas cookie fix. But I have 20 people who work at the office. So they usually get 1 or 2 cookies per batch. One of their favorites is one of the ones we're making today. It's a cheese cookie. And I have gotten it from a recipe from, actually I think it's a British cookbook. All the ingredients tend to be more Britishy. So it's actually supposed to be a 4 cheese cookie, but we only have 3 cheeses, so we are modifying it. We're also tripling the recipe, so I can have 45 cookies, so everybody can have 2. We're going to use the same cookie. One will be plain cheese, and then one is going to have a hot pepper jelly on it. So this is the first cookie. I'm going to post this cookie on the Clive's Conundrum website, but we're going to make a separate channel for our cooking videos so that if you're really more into composting, you don't have to watch these. But if you're into cooking, then you can go ahead and go over there and look at some of the things that we cook. Just wanted to, I think sometimes the people are interested in different things. So there you go. So hopefully this is one of many cookie videos for 2022, and let's just get going.
Here are our ingredients. The original recipe is called Quattro Formaggi, so there's 4 types of cheese. 1 tablespoon each of Parmesan, Roquefort, Danish or Stilton, Swisser Edam, and Cheddar. Then you have a cup of all-purpose flour, a pinch of salt, a stick of lightly salted butter, softened, and a teaspoon of dried oregano. This makes 15 cookies, but we need more than that, so I tripled the recipe. And since we only had 3 kinds of cheese, there are 4 tablespoons each of Parmesan, Edam, Cheddar. And the rest is basically the same, other than the fact that we had to add extra salt, almost a teaspoon.
Unsalted butter. I also have a trick for you. If your butter is cold, either in the freezer or in the refrigerator, but the recipe calls for room temperature or warmed up butter, but you don't want it melted, what you do is you put water, a cup of water in the microwave, and you boil it for like 5 minutes. You take the water out and put in the cold butter and just set the timer for 5 more minutes. When you take it out, it'll be totally manageable and more like room temperature without any melting, which is not what you want normally for your cookies. So that's a little tip for you for the butter. And in terms of equipment, we've got our cookie sheets. The cookie sheets are air bake pans because I tend to burn the bottoms of cookies if I don't use the air bake pans. I like to think it's the oven, but it might be me. And I did watch a video today actually about like kind of terracotta pans, that they are a much better pan. I've never used them, I don't have them, but she was saying that if you're someone who tends to burn your cookies, it might be worth having an investment of those particular kinds of pans, that they dry up the whatever it is that you're baking rather than turning them brown. So I don't know, I might, if I ever run across them, I might buy one, but I just use the air bake pans and they work just fine. I've got a mat for the smaller one, but I don't have a mat for the bigger one, so I'll have to use some parchment paper for that. I also have my scale out, and we'll talk about that when we get there, but when I'm making these cookies, there's so many of them, and I want to make sure that the cookies are actually the same size for when I cook them so that they're uniform. And I want to make sure that I get enough of them, so I weigh the full amount of dough and divide out how many cookies I'm supposed to get, and that helps me figure out how much each individual ball is supposed to weigh. It seems really finicky, but it does actually make the cookies quite uniform and cook much better. So I usually use my scale for the serving out the different cookies. So let's just get started. Do you want to help, Jason? I did not measure that. Which is supposed to be.
That kid. This thing's still rolling, by the way.
I know.
Burning.
So Jason's measured out our flour. We've got 3 cups of flour in our bowl. We've got 9 tablespoons and a bit extra. I always put in a bit extra cheese. And our oregano, which I did not measure. We determined that we needed to have 3/4 teaspoons of salt. But the recipe also calls for adding a pinch of salt. And since I'm doing 3 times, I thought, well, we'll just put in a teaspoon of salt. Maybe a little bit less. The cheese is pretty salty, and we'll just call it a day. So this gets mixed up, the cheeses get mixed up. So then the next thing you do is you mix the cheese with the flour. Just kind of get it evenly distributed.
So what are you doing now?
I'm making a well in the bottom of the mixture.
Why?
Because we're going to add the butter and cut it in. This is a little bit like making a pie crust. I probably should have cut these pieces of butter up into smaller pieces, but whatever. Let's not stress about it. I'm going to add in the stuff that I scraped off the paper from the butter, because waste not, want not. Got my handy paper towel. Okay, and now we just, and you can see that putting it in the microwave helped. The frozen stuff is still a little bit firm, but it's not unmanageable. You can see why you wouldn't want it to be straight from the fridge. You want it to be a little bit soft. So the dough seems pretty close right now. This took me a few minutes, but if I'd cut the butter into smaller pieces, that would have made it go faster, but I didn't, so I had to mash it all by hand. So whatever, I could have made this easier on myself and I didn't do it. All right, so now you're asking, so what else do you put in here? Well, nothing. This is the end. This is all that goes in here. So the next is a bit of a trick. Let's see if I can make a dough out of this.
Stop. Okay. Oh God. I'm probably right in shots here.
I could probably do this in the bowl and it would work. But it's a lot. It's easier when it's a smaller amount to do it in the bowl, but with such a big amount, we're gonna do it out here. So dividing it up into 2 balls really helped. My hands just aren't big enough to manipulate all that dough. And you can see, so as I said, we have 3 servings or 3 recipes mixed up in here, so it's a lot. I'm gonna weigh it to get a total. I'm going to actually divide by 40, so I have 20 of each of the 2 kinds of cookies, and then I'm going to roll out the 40 balls. So step 1 is to weigh the whole thing, and then I divide it out. So it's 802. So how about 800 divided by 40?
20.
Pretty easy. Okay, so I'm just gonna sit here and make balls.
Once you roll the balls out, then you put them on your tray and you just give a little cross hatch like Jason is doing here. And then they're all ready for the oven. You want to try to get them about the same thickness for all of them.
All right, it's been 20 minutes, so we're gonna take them out. So the edges are brown. I can try to lift one up, but they're supposed to sit on the tray for a few minutes, kind of finish cooking a little bit, and then they'll also harden up a little. So we're just going to let them sit on the tray. The other cookies, we formed them and put them on their parchment. Now, somehow I've managed to put 1 gram of dough in each cookie, and we're one short, but that's okay. So what I've done is we've put our thumbprint in these, repaired the cracks. This is not how the recipe is supposed to be, so it's not exactly like the kind of regular thumbprint cookies that you would use, but the next step is to put in our red pepper jelly, and then we will cook them up. So we'll see how that goes.
Editor Colleen here. I took these cookies into work and everyone got to try one of each, one with the jelly and one without. They've had these cookies before. I've made them every year, but never with jelly before. And hands down, everyone thought that the ones with jelly were far superior and really delicious. So maybe try some jelly.
So our first batch of Christmas cookies for 2022 is done. Very exciting. I'm going to take these over to work. I had today off because I worked on the weekend, so I'm going to take them over to work and let everyone enjoy them. These need to cool just a little bit more before we put them in. They're pretty lava hot. And if you've made it this far, I just wanted to add, I've made a lot of cookies for my workmates, and I always try new things, and sometimes I think they don't work out very well, and I think I shouldn't even take these into work because they're the worst cookies I've ever made. But I'm telling you that people love homemade cookies. And even the worst cookies I've ever made, everyone ate at least one. And there was always somebody who said, that is the most interesting, and in a good way. They didn't mean it in the Midwest, oh, that's interesting way. They meant it like, I really enjoyed that cookie. That was something that I'd never had before, and I would eat more of them. So don't be afraid to make cookies, even if they're weird. If you're making them for a group, I'm guaranteeing that someone will love them and they'll really appreciate your efforts. So hope you make some cookies for Christmas. We'll hopefully have some more recipes of things that we make. So thanks for joining us, and stay awesome. Okay, you can go do something else while I do this. This will take forever.
Really?
Well, it's 20-gram balls. I have to make 40 balls.
Merry Christmas!